Hello, everybody. I am reporting from my computer, so I hope that you can see me and hear me well. Um, I feel really inspired, so I just want to record this while this energy is moving, Um, yeah, so I want to share a little bit about myself, um, and my vision and what really inspires me with Unconditional Colors. So, so yeah, I'm laughing because I'm not sure where to start with this whole thing. Because we can start from like before I was even conceived. You know what I mean? I think I actually will start there. So, both of my parents were really young. They were both teenagers, and um, yeah, my mom got pregnant when she was 16. I'm not even sure how old my dad was, but he was around the same age. And so when I was born, my mom honestly wanted to abort me for several reasons, of course. And my grandma was very much like, no, you're not doing that. And so when I was born, um, my dad was in jail because he was robbing stereos and selling them. And my mom kind of didn't really want anything to do with me. And so she wanted to put me up for adoption. And my grandma was like, no, I'm taking her. And so my story with Unconditional Colors is really inspired a lot by my grandma. And if you have the energy and the time to listen to this and the curiosity, then you'll understand why, as I go more deeply into this whole thing. So, um, so yeah, they did the whole legal process. My grandma had legal custody over me, and I grew up with my grandma. It's really early in the morning here. I just feel really inspired right now. Um, Inspired, tired. So so yeah, my grandma took custody of me. I grew up with her until I was 7. And also I grew up with my great grandfather, which is her dad. I would oftentimes spend weekends with him or school vacations and things like that. And so, I had a really strong relationship with my grandmother and with her partner. They weren't married. Whenever I tell people my grandma's boyfriend, people are like, "What? Your grandma has a boyfriend?" I'm like, "Yeah. My grandma also rides a motorcycle." And so I grew up a lot with my great grandpa, and I'm super grateful for that. Like, really, yeah, that was a huge blessing for me. And so, yeah, my grandma raised me, and her partner, at one point said to her, "Hey, I think that, if you want to avoid some kind of resentment, it might be good that you allow your granddaughter to live with your daughter and see how it goes." My grandma was like, "No." My grandma was like, "No, I know who my daughter is. I don't think that's a good idea." But at some point she listened to him. And at some point I also wanted that because I didn't know my mom very well, but whenever I would see her, she was like super fun and cool, and she was younger, and so I had a good feeling as a kid, you know. And then I went to live with her when I was 7, and it was just like day and night. My whole life changed. My whole life changed. And not for the better. Honestly, Yeah, I think about it all, and I just see like this movie in my head, and I see this child who was just like taken from one world to another. And so I was taken from a world that was honestly really loving. And I'm really grateful that I had that base, because I know that a lot of abuse survivors in their childhood did not have that base. And so I had that base until I was 7, which are, the first 4 years of your life are the most important. I mean, that's probably hugely debatable, but in a lot of studies, they're considered to be the most important for brain development and your attitude and how you turn out to be. And so, ooh. so, so yeah, basically, I was good. Like, I had a lot of love growing up until I was 7. Wow, okay, a lot of moving right now. Yeah, sometimes it's important to talk about these things. I'm not accustomed to talking about these things to wider groups of people, so I feel like my body is a little bit like, ooh, what are you doing? But I feel like it's necessary, because in my process, a lot of other people's stories helped me so much and gave me a lot of hope. And so I'd like to offer the same. And so basically, yeah, I'm 7. I go to live with my mom with this, I was sad because I was a kid and I was moving away from my friends and from everything that I had ever known. But, where I grew up is not a big place, so my grandma lived, like, not very far away. And my great-grandfather actually lived 2 blocks away from my mom's house, so it wasn't really, my family was all around. And also very grateful for that. And fortunately, I still went to see my grandfather every weekend and every school holiday, so that was sort of a balancing factor within all of this. And so, yeah, I go to live with my mom. And it's the first day. And I start seeing who she truly is. She got really mad at me because I didn't fill one of those Brita filters. Because I don't even think, we never even had that at my grandma's house. So I wasn't even used to using that. We always had tap water with ice. So I don't know. So yeah, I wasn't used to it, and she got like really upset about this water filter. And I was like, okay. I already felt pressure from the first day that I went to live with her. So, and then things honestly just got worse. A lot of emotional abuse. A couple instances of physical abuse, but when you're a child, that just like destroys your world. It totally destroyed mine. And so, yeah, there were instances where certain physical things happened. And when I turned 8, one summer I went to go swimming at a public pool because I loved to swim as a child. And I was talking to the lifeguard about my life, because I would go all the time. I was really kind of like a loner as a child sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And so, I started talking with the people there, and she would ask me about my mom. I already was kind of used to like the whole dad thing of like, my dad doesn't really exist, but my mom, it was tricky, and so I was really young, And I told her what happened, and I said, yeah, I grew up with my grandma, but recently I moved in with my mom, and, she's done these things to me. And so this lifeguard says to me, she's like, well, there's a number that you can call, and there are people that will help you. And I was like, really? There are people that are going to help me? And so I said that it's okay that she calls them. And then I told my great-grandpa, because she had made the call for child services, basically, which I didn't know what that was. I was in 3rd grade. I wasn't even in 3rd grade yet. So, yeah, child services went to my mom's house. And I told my grandpa, because I was at his house that day, and I told him that meeting was going to happen. And he was like, they're going to take you away. They're going to take you away. And I was like, what do you mean they're going to take me away? I thought they were going to help me. My grandpa was like, big brother is coming. You have to tell them that it wasn't true. And I was like, what do you mean I have to tell them that it wasn't true? And he was like, well, I don't want you to get taken away. And so him and I went to my mom's house, and the child services person came, and I lied. And that was another thing that just totally destroyed me. I was like, because the gaslighting was really real, but when you're a kid, you don't know what gaslighting is. You're just learning how to feel things and how to experience life through your own lens. I'm sorry, I'm a bit cold. As I said, it's like 6 a.m. Oh, and I'm also talking about things. Ooh, talking about things. But, yeah, so I had to lie. I didn't really have to, but I felt obligated to. And I didn't want to be taken away because I didn't even know what that meant. So, yeah, I lied. And, I just told her that it was an accident. I didn't mean what I said. I'm surprised that the woman believed me, to be honest. Because I'm horrible at lying. I always have been. So, yeah, that's kind of surprising for me. But, yeah, so moving forward, that whole situation was totally forgotten about. And, yeah, my mom never changed. And then it was always like oh, I'm so sorry, I love you. But for many years, I had this question for many years, really. How can she say that she loves me? How is that possible? I really asked myself that so many times. How can someone say that they love you and then hurt you physically and emotionally and then tell you that never happened? I was just like, I don't know how that works. If someone could, as a kid, if someone could explain that to me, I just really didn't know. And I would pray a lot. And I would imagine escaping somehow. Yeah. Because I wasn't even really allowed to have privacy. I wasn't allowed to close my door fully. And one time, she actually removed my entire door from the hinges for a week. And just a lot of different things. A lot of different things happened that really made me question everything that I had experienced in the first 7 years of my life. And she really tried to make me hate my family. which she never got to do. Thank God, she never was able to really get down to that level. But I remember that I was confused for a really long time, and I started questioning my grandma, and I remember I called my grandma a few years ago and I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I doubted you. I'm sorry that I believed these things about you. And, I had a really sincere conversation with her, and I cried a lot more than I'm crying now. Yeah. And I told her, I'm like, in my heart, you've always been my mom. Because she took care of me from the beginning of my life, And I actually used to call her mom. And she would correct me. And so I, in all of this abuse story, everything, I'm incredibly grateful that I always had the other side. But the confusing thing is that they were such different polarities, that it was like, okay, on the one hand, there are people who love me, who aren't perfect, they get angry and they scream and they whatever, but they never touch me in any physical abusive manner. They never say things to me that are abusive, and I know that they want the best for me, and I trust them when they say I'm sorry, and I trust them when they say I love you. I never question it. But with my mom, I was in this constant doubt and question for many years. For many, many years. And I was really confused. Yeah. I was really incredibly confused about everything. And I remember feeling just such a deep desire to get the hell out. And I remember when I was 12 years old, at my grandma's house, I told her that I wanted to leave. And I told her, like, please, can we do something? Can I get out of there? I can't handle it anymore. I feel like I'm in prison, I really felt like I was in prison. And my life was so monitored and hypervigilated with her that I felt like I couldn't even breathe. I felt like everything that I did was being watched. I felt like I was constantly under surveillance. And she would watch me sleep sometimes as well. Yeah. So, anyway, this is just a reminder, like, of course, these things are still painful things. They don't affect me in the way that they used to because I don't have the same attachment to these things like I used to. Like, I don't attach, the possibility that my mom will change or the possibility that she will love me to who I am as a person anymore. And letting go of that was a huge shift in my life, and that's kind of like what I want to get into with this video. And so, where was I? 12. Yeah, okay. So I was 12 and, wanted to get out. My grandma was like, yeah, there are some legal things that we can do. But nothing ever ended up happening, and things just got worse, really. Things just got worse. But fortunately, I would see my grandfather every weekend, and, sometimes even during the week because she wanted to get drunk with her friends. So I was a happy kid because I just wanted to not be there, you know? That was like my mode of existence, was like, when is the weekend coming? When can I get out of here, you know? And it felt like a prison sentence, honestly, because I would spend 3 months at my grandfather's house, and my mom wouldn't even contact me. She wouldn't look for me, nothing, you know? She'd come on my birthday and make this like huge parade type of thing, and then she would disappear, you know? And my grandma even said to her one time, she's like, you know, money will never buy your daughter's love. It doesn't work that way. And it's the truth, you know. She really tried to buy my love, but at the same time talked about how she was like living in poverty and how I need to be really grateful because she's a single mom and we were in poverty, but we weren't in poverty, you know. So it was a lot of like manipulative tactics with a lot of different aspects, and you know, the whole thing just created confusion. And that's what this kind of person is really good at creating. Because when you're confused, it's easier for you to be abused. Ooh, I've never thought of it that way. But it rhymes. It's true. If someone can make you confused, it is much easier for them to abuse you. And yeah, so I felt trapped. And so I went into this spiral of signing up for every club possible so that I would basically come home from school at 8 p.m. and then go back to school at around 7 a.m. So that means that I basically had a couple hours at home and then I would go to bed. So that was kind of my tactic. And it worked, to be honest. It actually worked. I felt better that way. But, you know, I would feel this dread of going home, because it was never home for me. And she would always want me to call it home, and I could not. I could not. I couldn't. I really, no. And that bedroom had so many traumatic memories for me that I didn't even really... I had insomnia for many years, actually. Because I just didn't feel safe, you know? And I had to listen to, like, tropical music. Or any kind of music, really, when I would go to bed. Because I couldn't sleep. I didn't feel safe. And I had this underlying sensation that at any moment something could happen to me. Fortunately, nothing ever did, but I had that fear. And a sense of urgency, you know. At some point, I also felt like I, you know, needed to prove myself. I felt like if I was academically successful, that would be a ticket to being loved. And so I went really deep into that extreme. And then I turned 16 and I felt stressed out for the first time. I had this really militant chemistry teacher who would yell, and actually a lot of people, mostly girls in the class, ended up having to go to therapy because it was just too much. And a lot of times he would talk to me. He would just talk to me in a normal voice and I would start crying. So yeah, it was quite intense. And so this one day I walked into the guidance office, the principal's office. It was the principal's office in the morning. And I just... I was like, because the secretary asked me, how are you? What are you looking for? What's up? And I was like, I'm stressed out and I don't know what to do. And then this woman jumped out of her seat and she was like, come to my office with me. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I went to her office, and it was like this little magical corner in a really bright light, weird school. And so she took me into this like really calm, small office with like a warm lamp, And we just talked. And she said, if you want, you can see the school counselor. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'd love that. And my mom actually signed off on it because I was really close. And I think because I was so close, I could sell the whole thing to her, because I was like, oh, I don't think I need to go to therapy. I just, I want to check it out and whatever. Because that was my reality at that moment. I was super emotionally numb and frozen. Because for 9 years of my life, I had learned that I needed to be that way. And so, so I went to the first therapy session. And I just made jokes. I literally just made jokes. And, a few months down the line, because I ended up staying with this therapist, and she became my friend really afterwards. After I graduated, I would always go back and we would just talk, as people. She's someone who really had a huge impact on my life. And she said to me, I really didn't think that you needed therapy. I saw you as really confident and strong, and I didn't really know why you came. But on the inside, I was like a total disaster. I didn't feel confident or strong or secure at all. I felt like I was constantly proving or trying to prove myself through all of the things that I accomplished. Because I accomplished quite a lot of things that year, the last 2 years that I was a student in high school. And so the second session with this therapist, she just ripped me open, totally ripped me open. Started asking me about my family. I talked about my great-grandpa and how much I love him, and I talked about kind of my whole story with everything. And she said, well, you have a trauma from when you were an infant. When you were 2 months old and you went to live with your grandma, that produces a trauma of separation from your mom. And in this session, I just cried so much for the first time after so long of feeling like I have to numb myself out all the time. And I just cried and I cried and I cried. And I just felt amazing. I felt joy. I felt like really something liberated from me. And I didn't feel so rigid. I had this moment of openness, of calm. And so, it was really beautiful. And I was excited. And since it was Monday, I had spent the weekend with my grandfather, so I needed to collect some things from his house. And I called my mom and I said, hey, I have something that I'd like to share with you. Because I was really excited, And she was like, what? And I was like, I spoke with the therapist again, and I learned that I have this trauma from when I was 2 months old. And I think that there's so much that we can work on, and I feel really good. I feel like a lot of things liberated from me. And she hung up the phone. She hung up. And then she called back. And she screamed on the phone and said how psychological juju and how I'm making stuff up, and basically just tried to tell me that therapy is bad. And so and that I'm blaming her for things, and that, I didn't realize that she was 17 and that this and that. And I told her, honestly, I really respect everything that you've done, and I've told many people that you inspire me, that you're a strong person, and that I'm very grateful for everything that you've done and for the fact that I'm here. But she always took it for that side of like, I hate her or things like that. She would always say, I know that you hate me, I know that you hate me, I know that you hate me. And I would always tell her, I don't hate you, I don't even know where that idea comes from. So that same day, she called again later and was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, all I want to do is have a conversation with you. Don't really want anything else. And, she just got super angry and basically took all of my stuff from since I was 7 years old to my grandfather's house, who had dementia at this time, and no one in my family wanted to recognize it when I told them that he had dementia and that we needed to take him to the doctor and that I was not legally capable of taking him to the doctor. He had dementia, and so, my mom arrived with all of these things, and he started to hyperventilate and was incredibly stressed out. And yeah, I asked my grandma to come. And that was basically that, because after that point, I kept trying to have communication with her, and she would not respond. Or she would respond and then disappear, So we would, for example, I would say, hey, I'd like to talk to you, but I would prefer to talk to you in a public place, at like a cafe or a park or something, where there are other people around, because I really did not trust her, to not get violent, and I didn't want to be in the same car as her. And so, I really tried to just talk to her for a while. This was a consistent theme for months. And I would show my therapist the messages that we were sharing, and I would ask her, did I say something that would be offensive to her? Did I say something that's conflict-inducing or anything like that? And she would say, no. I feel like you're being very, neutral and mature and diplomatic. And that's really what I wanted. I just wanted a line of communication. I was really dying to have a conversation. I really wanted to just express all of the sadness that I felt, but also all of the love that I felt. And I never, ever had that space. We never got to that point. She promised it to me for years, and it never happened. And I told her, I was like, the only thing I want for my birthday is to have a conversation with you. Like a real human conversation. But I was so young that I didn't know that some people just aren't capable of that. And I think that's the thing that hit me the most, is realizing that she's not capable of that. And so, so later on, my final year of high school, my great-grandfather's dementia got really bad. And I was trying to do everything that I could for him. But, I was also at school for around 8 to 12 hours a day, sometimes 12 because of all of the other activities that I was involved in. And so, sometimes he would go and do things that weren't safe, like walking alone on busy streets, or where there's a lot of cars and no sidewalk, or driving his car when he really shouldn't have even had a license anymore. And I told my family, one day I came home from school and he started screaming at me. And I really just couldn't handle it anymore. And I had all this information from a year before when I had called different mental hospitals. And I was like, you know what, maybe I'm just going to take him to one of these mental hospitals myself now, even though I wasn't legally an adult. But I thought, maybe it's okay, I don't know. I really just needed help, so I just looked for help. And I had a permit to drive, so I always, use this excuse with him of like, hey, I need to practice for my driver's test, to kind of not break his dignity. And so, yeah, I just said, hey, we need to go on a trip. We need to go on an adventure. And he was like, no, we're not going anywhere. And I was like, yeah, we really need to go somewhere. He was like, okay. And so we went to this mental hospital. And he was basically screaming the whole car ride. He was pretty angry at me. And then we arrive at the mental hospital, and I mean, the thing is that they're basically about to close because the time that I ended school was basically a half hour before they close normally. So yeah, we arrived just in time, and we had to wait a little bit, and he started screaming in the main lobby, where people in the waiting room, screaming, like freaking out. And so the nurses took us in and they asked, what's going on? And I was like, look, he has dementia and I live with him by myself. And my family isn't really involved, and I try my best to communicate to them that, we need to do something for him, but they don't want to face the reality. And so, yeah, they took us into this room that had Finding Nemo paintings on the wall. And it gave me a sense of solace and support. Just the Finding Nemo paintings. And of course the nurses as well, but at first they weren't with us. It was just him and me alone in the Finding Nemo room. And he started hyperventilating and pacing. And I just started bawling my eyes out. I just couldn't handle it anymore. To see someone that you love so much deteriorate in front of you is incredibly difficult. And so, yeah, we started talking with the nurses. And they could see his condition. It was plain as day, And they gave me some options of things that we could do. And at one point she asked me, why are you doing this? How old are you? And I said, I'm 17. And they said, what? What are you, what? It was like a shock. And I had normalized it because it had already been basically a year and a half of this, that it just became, this is just the reality at this point. It wasn't easy. I was sad. I cried a lot, but it just became part of my life, I wasn't going to leave him. And yeah, I wasn't going to ignore him or avoid the reality of what he was suffering from. And so, yeah, she gave me some options. And she said, well, if you want, these are some people that you could talk to. You could have a nurse come once a week. And also, it's very important that you get his license to drive revoked. And, I completely agreed with them. And so, I went home after that with my grandpa. And I called my grandma, his daughter. It's my great grandpa. I know I keep saying my grandpa, but it's just what I'm used to. And I called my mom, called both of them. I told them the situation and I said, hey, we need to get his license revoked. They both hung up on me. The next day I go to school. Everything's normal. I had debate after school. And my mom calls me, who never talked to me at that time, even though I would try to talk to her. She randomly calls me. Well, I called my grandpa's house. And she answered, which was really strange. And she said, I'm gonna pick you up. And I was really confused. She didn't really tell me anything, but I could feel that something was off. And I get in the car and she said he got into a car accident. But he's okay. And everyone's okay. The car's destroyed. And I was like, oh, thank God. Thank God, really. You know, I was so grateful that no one got hurt. But then I go to my house, my grandpa's house, where I was living with him. My mom and my grandma are there. One day before, they hung up the phone on me. The day after, an emergency situation occurs, and they were sharing the same information that I had shared with them the day before. And I was really amazed. I was honestly like, love doesn't wait for emergencies. Love acts now. Love doesn't wait for these kinds of horrible situations to happen. Love is seeing someone where they're at, not seeing them how you want to see them, because it protects yourself. And so my grandpa, you know, with his dementia, taught me a lot about love in action. You know, because we can all talk about love in a really fluffy, beautiful, poetic way. But when someone's ill and you see them genuinely suffering and losing their grip of their body and their reality, it's really hard to face it, you know, to really feel it fully. It's horrible. It's horrible to experience and to watch, you know. But it's necessary to witness them in that. Because if you don't, you're only loving who they were for you. You're not loving the spirit of who they are. That an illness or whatever has nothing to do with. And so I felt really hurt, because I felt like my family really did not understand what love is. And this really ripped me apart. And yeah, so a few months go by. And I come home from school, and my grandpa was really happy. And I was like, wow, he's happy. That's amazing, you know? He's not usually happy like this. And I said, hey, what happened? You know, what are you up to? What are you excited about, you know? I really wanted to celebrate that space with him, because those moments were so rare. But his joy came from the fact that he had walked about half a kilometer on a busy road with no sidewalk to buy potatoes because he forgot to buy them when I think my grandma had taken him to the grocery store a couple of days before that. Because they actually started getting more involved after the car accident. So they started taking him to the grocery store and doing things that I used to do. So I did appreciate that at the very least. It wasn't all terrible, but I really did feel like such a deep disrespect towards him from their side. Yeah. But so yeah, basically my grandpa was really happy because he had walked and he had bought his potatoes and he was, flying free, you know what I mean? But it's dangerous. And he was not in a healthy state to be doing that. And people tend to drive recklessly on those kinds of roads. So I called my grandma and I told her what happened. This was a Thursday. And she said, I hope that a car doesn't hit him. We need to stop this. We need to make sure that this doesn't happen. And so that Sunday was Easter Sunday. And I wake up to a knock at the door at 4 a.m. when it was my mom, my grandma. And when I opened that door, their faces were pale white. I just knew that he was dead. And they told me that he was dead. And I asked them how. I asked them how. How did he die? And they said a car hit him in the middle of the night. And I was asleep. I didn't know that he had left in the middle of the night. I didn't know that he was leaving in the middle of the night. I didn't know that that was a thing. And yeah, he crossed the road. He was actually just about to cross the road, like right at the end. And the car hit him and kept going. Fortunately, he died quickly. I know that doesn't really sound so fortunate, but at least he wasn't suffering in pain for hours. It was quite quick. So, yeah. So then, the woman who hit him was 27, and she had a daughter. A son who was 5. And she lived like 200 meters from where it happened on the same road, and she didn't stop. So, my grandpa's dead. I'm living in his house. And, my grandma wants me to go and live with her. But my grandma is an alcoholic. And I really needed to be alone. And I really needed to grieve in a healthy way. And so, that day that he died, my family was really full of hatred towards the person who hit him. And, I understand where they're coming from. But for me, I was so focused just on the fact that he wasn't alive and how much that hurt me, how much grief I felt, that I really didn't have the energy to be hating somebody who I didn't even know. I told my family that, and they got incredibly angry with me. And I left the house because, where he was hit was actually on the same block, on the parallel street. And so, they told me to not go and see it, but I felt like I needed to. And I saw his blood on different parts of the road. And I calculated how long it would have taken for that car to get from one spot to the other based on the marks that were on the road. And it was about 3 to 4 seconds. And I just cried. I cried so much. And crying. And so many people tried to tell me, don't cry. And I was like, what am I supposed to do then? And so this really gentle man who lived right next to where it happened, he saw me there because I was there for about an hour or more. And he asked me, can I hug you? And I said, of course. Thank you. I learned a lot about kindness from those people. I learned that sometimes your family doesn't show you the love that you deserve. But if you believe in love, other people do. And other people will love you. And so yeah, I was really grateful for that man who came, and then I went with my grandma to her house, and I took my bike to the lake because I grew up in the city of Erie, next to the Great Lake. Actually, no, before that, I painted. I made a painting called Celebration, and I found joy, I really celebrated his life, and on some level, because of the dementia, I felt relieved that he was, he died in a horrible way, but I felt relieved that he didn't have to suffer anymore, because he would talk about death almost every day and how he wanted to die. And so in a way it was like his wish came true in a really horrible way, but yeah, be careful what you wish for. And so yeah, so I painted actually before I went up to the road. And then my family came, they were very conflictual with me. I went to the road to see what had happened, and then I went back, and my grandma forced me to go to her house with her, even though I really just wanted to be alone, because I knew that she was going to get drunk, and I couldn't handle it. I didn't have the emotional space for that at that moment. And yeah, so I arrived at her house. I went to the lake. I watched the sunset and I cried. But I also felt a really profound sense of love. You know, I felt a lot of love actually. And I felt like, you know, that previous summer I was learning a lot about love. I was going to the forest, I was meditating, I was reading about love. And I felt like all of those things became real, you know, like I felt all of that stuff in my body on a deeper level. I really felt how love transcends everything, you know. I felt that he was within me, you know, and so I didn't feel like he was gone forever. I just felt like he was liberated from his pain in a way. And I felt his love with me. And I didn't have any regrets because I knew that I did the best that I could. I wasn't perfect by any means, but I did what I could for him. And that was a lot. And so yeah, my family continued with the hatred. And I just really, I couldn't handle it. I didn't have the energy for it. I was really in grief and grieving his death. And so then I went to university. I had already planned all of this stuff before all these things happened. I wanted to study in England because it's a lot cheaper than in the US. And it's not cheap, but it's cheaper, you know. And so I wanted to, you know, save myself from being in debt until I'm like 65, you know. So yeah, I wanted to go to a country like that. No, I really wanted just to go somewhere else. I think, you know, on a deeper level, I just really wanted to get really far away from my mom. Of course, I wanted to explore another culture and things like that, but I really just wanted to get far away. And so I did. And a couple of years later, we had the trial about his death and everything. And yeah, you know, time passes and I really kept trying to have a relationship with her for a really long time. But it wasn't possible. And then I met someone and I fell into quite a toxic dynamic with that person. And through that experience, I discovered what narcissism is. And once I discovered that, everything clicked. I was like, wow, this is who my mom is. And it's unlikely that she's going to change. And so, you know, I had the whole existential crisis about if I'm a narcissist or if I'm a sociopath or all these things. And my friend was like, yo, stop, please stop. And yeah, I cut off contact with my mom. And it was the best decision I think I've ever made. It was hard. And sometimes it still is hard, you know. But she's a person that I always wish the best for. But I'm not scared of her anymore. And for a while I was terrified of her. And this past summer, I went to visit my grandma, and I didn't tell my mom that I was coming, and she found out somehow and popped up at the house randomly, and I was just myself with her. And I was joyful with her, and it was like magic. It was like I graduated from that prison sentence. You know what I mean? It's like like those people who graduate from prison with their PhD. It was funny because I was sitting and I was actually coloring, and so it was like I was making my own diploma, and she popped up and, you know, came with this energy of like, why do you hate me? And I said, I don't hate you. I just can't play this game with you anymore. She's like, what game? What are you talking about? Are you okay? And I laughed. I genuinely laughed with her. Not with her because she wasn't laughing, but I laughed. I was just myself. I was like, honestly, these past 2 years have been the best years of my life. And it's the truth. Because I never had this toxicity with her. I didn't have any of this gaslighting or toxic conversations or, you know, subtle manipulation or her trying to make me feel guilty or shameful. I didn't have any of that for 2 years. And I was just like, wow. I started feeling that I'm a person, you know, that my existence is not just to be behind someone else or to live in someone else's shadow or to spend my whole life trying to receive love from someone who doesn't know what love is. So yeah, last time I saw her, I told her the truth, and within 5 minutes she walked away. And I was just myself. No people pleasing, nothing, just myself. And saying the truth in a loving way. And even that was too much for her. So yeah, I'm sharing this because Unconditional Colors comes from a deep desire that I have to help people to heal from the things that are really tricky to heal from, you know. I really never knew if I would ever feel solid. I never knew if I would ever feel free of guilt and free of shame. And honestly, I don't feel those things anymore. I have moments where I relapse a little bit, but those things really don't stick around. They really don't. And it's not who I am anymore. And so, you know, Unconditional Colors is about color therapy because that's how I healed myself, was through painting. And then I stopped painting because I felt like I was dependent on painting. And then I started working a lot with color and just meditating with color and wearing color and imagining with color and things like that. And I realized over a year ago, this man was talking about how he had dedicated his life to the coca leaf. And he said that he did that because he realized that he was talking about it all the time. And I was with my friend and I thought about it and I said, well, I think I talk about colors all the time. And she was like, yeah, everyone knows you for that. You always talk about it with a lot of love and a lot of joy. And so I was like, yeah, I think that's really what I'm about, you know. And color has given me the space to truly feel things and go beyond my concepts of what those things are, and to go beyond all the stories and all of the really hateful words that had been thrown at me my whole life. You know, colors allowed me to feel my emotions on a deeper level and in a new way. And yeah, that's why I share this with people, because I know that it's really hard to heal from abuse, and also really hard to, really feel liberated from grief and from seeing someone that you love have dementia, and seeing someone else that you love be an alcoholic and talk about suicide, and basically not having a family. It's hard. But I've learned to cultivate that love in myself, and I've really learned that all of this stuff that happened that was really painful brought me to such a liberation in my soul of I said it many times, especially when my grandpa died, for me that was nothing worse can ever happen. Nothing worse can ever happen, because I loved him so much that I was there's nothing worse than this. Anything that life is going to throw at me is never going to be worse than this. And so if the worst is out of its way, it can only get better, right? Of course I'll have difficult moments, but it'll never be like this. And so, yeah. If you have struggled with abuse, your emotions and your feelings have actually always been your guide that tells you that that situation is wrong, that you shouldn't be there. And that's why they try to make you not feel. And manipulation happens also on a global level, on a political level, on an economic level. And when we stop desensitizing ourselves, and when we start feeling more, we become true and honest. And as we feel more, we liberate more. And colors are a really great way to do that. And so that is why I dedicate my life to this. Because painting really honestly saved my life. Because at one point I didn't know if I could continue. And then going deeper into colors and into feeling more in my body without having any mental concept of what those feelings were, just colors and looking at colors and imagining colors and feeling colors, has liberated me on a really profound level. And this is a medicine that has been used in many civilizations, and yeah, I'm really grateful because, all of these struggles really forced me to learn what healing is, what unconditional love is, and that change is possible. And that if you devote yourself to love, love devotes itself to you. And so, if you have the courage to feel more, start. I know it's hard when you've got a lot of pain trapped in your body. And that's really where painting helped me so much, was to just move that stuff out. And movement, dancing, going to the forest, all of those things really changed my life. And so that's the backstory a little bit. It's not everything. If I had told everything, I think we'd be here for hours and hours and hours. But if you've listened this far, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me. I hope that this story touched you in some way. And I hope that you know that in your struggles, you are never, ever, ever alone. And that the emotions that you have been taught to suppress are the key to finding who you truly are. And the key to liberating yourself from the cycles of abuse. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.